May the Force be with you. Just kidding. I don't think Darth Vader says that. Good old Yoda says that. Those are great movies. And we're going to talk about Force, okay? Yeah, I'm a little cheesy, but this is one of my favorite things to talk about. I have some great videos to show you. So don't miss out. Don't stop this. Maybe watch it a couple times. I want to let you guys know I'm not going to go over every single concept in the lesson in this particular mini lesson, but I am going to go over a lot more of the concepts on in our Class Connect. So just be prepared that we will talk about some of the other little details, just so you know. But starting us off, we are going to talk about force and gravity. So those are our two main concepts in our next unit that's coming up. So gravity, we all know, is why we fall, and you guys are going to see a great video coming up. And forces are very important because basically they happen every second of the day. Yes, me sitting on this chair, I'm exerting a force on the chair, and the chair is actually exerting a force on me. It's an equal force, otherwise I'd fall on my, my bum, not my face, because my face would fall last. But nonetheless, those are equal forces, and we'll talk about that more in class. But let's talk about forces in general. So a force is a push or a pull, and different types of forces affect all matter. So I want you guys to know that I could push against this computer really hard. That's a force, okay? I could pull on the computer really hard. That's a force too, okay? So forces are pretty much, when you touch anything, even if it's the lightest touch, you're like, touch. That's a force, okay? It just depends on how much. But different types of forces will always affect matter, typically moving them, squeezing them, pressing them, whatever it might be. But a force will affect matter. They're measured in newtons, so you're going to see the big N. Okay? A big N stands for newtons, and that is always going to be how force is measured. So keep that in mind, because when you get to high school, you're going to hear that over and over again. So make sure you guys know that it's always measured in newtons. And we will do some kind of calculations. Very minor, I promise, but we'll talk about that in class as well. So you're always going to put your units as newtons, big N. All right, so let's watch our first example of a force. Remember, a push or a pull can be in pretty much any direction. So, watch this one. Okay, so there's some of your forces that, obviously when you're getting hit by something, 35 balls in 30 seconds, not that they're all the same person, but that is a force obviously against you, okay? Being hit. There are many other forces. You can push somebody, whatever it might be, just even touching something, putting your hand on a table, is still exerting a force, okay? So I want to give you kind of the basics. When you go to watch this, you're getting the basics. Go back to your unit and read through and take notes, and then we'll cover more in our live session, okay? So let's talk a little bit about gravity. To the moon and beyond. So gravity is the force of the earth pulling on an object, which is kind of weird to think about. The force of the earth. Remember, force is a push or a pull. So in this case, the force of the earth is pulling on an object. It can be us, it could be the moon. So there are a lot of different things when we think of gravity. Now I want you guys to know, and you guys will be doing some of your assignments that have to do with gravity, and I will help you through that because you have to understand a bunch of different concepts, okay? The magnitude of the pull of gravity on your body can be measured by your body weight. So when you get on a scale, it's very interesting to think about those old school scales. If you guys even know what those look like. I mean, back when I was young, that's all they had, where the dial kind of goes around. Well, basically, it's measuring gravity. It's not so much measuring the weight, but it's measuring basically the pull of gravity on your body, okay? And that calculates your body weight. Kind of a weird concept, kind of hard to understand, but just know that the reason you weigh the way you weigh, or the way you... Let me start over. The reason why you weigh what you weigh is because of gravity. I mean, obviously we all have different weights, and that's true, but because our bodies are being pulled by gravity, okay, the magnitude of that pull. So kind of a weird concept. let that sink in a little bit. We'll talk more about that because it's kind of a cool concept. But gravity has to do with the magnitude of the pull, okay? And it can be measured by our body weight. So here's another example of gravity. Not a very fun one, though. Okay, so again, another example of gravity, not really to our advantage because those are a bunch of people falling. But that is why we fall, is because of gravity, that force of gravity. So a couple things I want you guys to know is weight is the force of gravity on an object. So again, because of our weight, what that actually is calculating is the force of gravity on that scale in particular, okay? And we could weigh ourselves in newtons, but we're not going to. You know, weight is a force, and that would be measured in newtons. But that would be kind of weird if we kind of went around like, I weigh 20 newtons. So no, we don't do that. And we've found out another way to do that, and we measure ourselves in pounds or kilograms, okay? All objects have a force of gravity, okay? No matter where you are in the universe, here on Earth, there is a force of gravity acting on all things, okay? And all things have that force. Okay, so it's varying in different degrees. It depends on, you know, again, so many different things. But we'll talk about all that. I want you guys to get the main gist of forces and gravity. Okay, so there was our example. Sorry, I kind of jumped ahead a little bit. But I want you guys to think about Newton and gravity. The law of gravity, good old Newton, okay, Sir Isaac Newton, very, very, very important guy. So read about him in your unit because you guys are going to read a little bit. And you're going to find out now in this unit and probably in the next couple units more and more about him. So the law of gravity, which he came up with, explains that all things fall because Earth exerts a force of gravity that attracts all objects. Okay, let me read that again. The law of gravity explains that the things fall because Earth exerts a force of gravity that attracts all objects. Okay, so think about that. Everything's going to fall. Earth exerts that particular gravity force, okay, and it's going to attract all objects. Again, there are different, you know, amounts of gravity on different, like say for instance the moon. The gravity is much less. That's why you kind of float a little bit, okay? There's still gravity, but it's much less than Earth, okay? Newton's law of gravity states that any two objects in the universe attract each other with a force that depends on two things. So I want you guys to think about this. This will come in handy when you guys go to do your assignment. The mass of each object and the distance between each object, okay? So think about that gravity and that attraction with that force depends on two things. The mass of those objects, okay, so maybe the mass of Earth versus us, and the distance between those objects. So, you know, how far away are you from that object? So you guys are going to keep that in mind as you know, look at your assignments and I explain them because that has a lot to do with your answer that you're going to submit. So in other words, every object attracts every other object. It's very true, okay? There's a force of gravity, remember, on everything, whether it's, you know, way out in the universe or right here in your own home or something. But the gravitational force between them is going to vary depending on the mass of the objects and the distance, okay? Two very important keys. So remember that. Pretty quick, pretty simple. There are a lot of other concepts in this lesson, but we are going to go over those in the live session. But just understand the main principles of force and gravity, and you guys will get everything else. It'll come along just nicely. So we'll see you in our live class.